Put it together. So just waiting for a couple more, well, one more minute. We're gonna start at 12:05. All right, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Love of Democracy. Hope you can hear me clearly. I want to thank everybody for joining us for the training today. My name is Tasha Sacco, and I'll be emceeing today's training. And as you arrive, please introduce yourself in the chat. And our prompt for the day is going to be, what made you fall in love with democracy? So if you ever watched, Brown Sugar, what made you fall in love with hip hop? What made you fall in love with democracy?
Joining us this afternoon. We're super excited to jump into our training. It's going to take a few minutes to walk through the agenda so you have a sense on how we will spend our time this afternoon. So welcome again. We're going to run through some primary fast facts for the upcoming March 19th election. Throughout the presentation, we will pause to make sure that we can answer your questions or reflect on anything that you've heard. But we also will be answering questions in real time in the chat. So feel free to use the chat feature if you do have a question. We will be both recording and sharing this presentation slide deck after today's training. And all links that are referenced throughout today's presentation will be in the chat, but they'll also be shared with you after. So you can be fully present. Don't have to worry about taking tons of notes. We got your back. So after our first set of question and answers, we're going to move on to discuss what exactly is on our ballot and how we can prepare for them. We'll pause again for some questions, and then we'll do a brief breakout to give you all a chance to chat with one another, and then we'll come back and then we'll wrap up for the day and give you the rest of your afternoon back.
Thanks, Erica. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brianna. Sorry, our communication and narrative strategist, and she's going to go ahead and cover some March primary election facts.
Thanks, Tasha. So the keyword Tasha said there is fast. We're going to go over important dates. We're going to go over deadlines. We're going to go over ID rules. We want to make sure that we give you as much time back as we can. Thank you for taking time on your busy schedule to come here. All right, so let's get started. So the next election that we're doing here is a March primary, and that's going to be on March 19th. But make sure that you are registered by February 20th. That's the registration deadline. That's like a week away, so it's coming on us real soon. As some of you know, Ohio does have some new stricter voting rules, especially when it comes to IDs. So we're going to go over some of those. To vote in person, you must now show an unexpired photo ID. If you want to know which counts as a proper photo ID, you can go to voteohio.gov, or you can go to your Board of Elections website, and there'll be a list of proper photo IDs. To vote by mail, there's also stricter deadlines about requesting, returning, and carrying your mail-in ballot. You can get a free Ohio State ID card from the Ohio BMV. If you're 17 or older, you can get this for free. If your ID says non-citizen, but you're a citizen now, you can get a free replacement without the non-citizen label for free. And you can also get free voter ID support from Vote Writers. They're a nonpartisan nonprofit that helps people acquire IDs or acquire the materials that they need to get IDs, such as like social security cards and birth certificates and things like that. They also provide free rides to your BNB to get IDs. Here's some other key dates and deadlines. So actually right now you can go ahead and you can request your vote by mail ballot application if that's what you'd like to do. Again, the registration deadline is February 20th, and early in-person and vote by mail voting starts February 21st. The deadline for voting by mail and the absentee ballot application deadline is March 12th, and early in-person voting ends on March 17th at 5 p.m. The vote by mail, I'm hungry, it's my time. The vote by mail absentee ballot postmark deadline is March 18th, and election day is March 19th. And the hours for election day are 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. So you can register to vote both online and by mail. If you want to register online, you should go to voteohio.gov. You'll need the last 4 digits of your social security number, and driver's license number, or state ID number if you don't have a driver's license, or you can download and complete a voter registration form at voteohio.gov and return to your local board of elections. Or if you don't have a printer, which you would need for that option, you can go to your board of elections, you can go to a public library near you, Job and Family Service Office, or the BMV, and they'll have a voter registration paper form that you can fill out. So now how we currently have 3 ways to vote. You can vote early in person at your local BOE, and you can vote early from February 21st to March 17th. You must show an unexpired, acceptable form of photo identification. You can vote on election day on March 19th at your assigned polling location, and make sure you make note that if you want to vote early in person, you vote at your local board of elections. But if you want to vote on election day, then you vote at your assigned polling location. You don't vote at the board of elections on election day. If you want to vote by mail, you must apply for an absentee ballot by March 12th, and no photo ID is needed. You'll just need the last 4 numbers of your social security number and some of the other requirements I just went over a couple slides ago. If you're wondering how you can find the closest ballot drop box, that's going to be at your board of elections. So the ballot drop box looks like a big mailbox. It just has a bunch of big words on it, like vote. So it will be easier spot. So what happens sometimes is, say you don't have a stamp for your absentee ballot, or maybe you missed the postmark deadline and you're just worried that you're not going to make the postmark deadline in time. You can go ahead and go to your board of elections and put your ballot right into the drop box. And there's usually somebody, I think there's somebody has to be there. Somebody has to be there. And they'll help you if you have any issues.
Hey, Bree, where is the board of elections here in Cuyahoga County?
East 30th and Euclid. Thank you, Reese. Thank you. Okay, so some other ways to get election ready besides what's been over. Make sure you look up your early voting hours, and we're going to go over the early voting hours for Cuyahoga County BOE on the next slide. Make sure you look up your polling location. Sorry. Make sure you look up your polling location. And even if you've been voting at the same place for, say, the past decade, it could be that it changed. So just make sure that you verify it before you show up, so you don't show up to the wrong place. You can also look up your sample ballot. Revealing your ballot in advance is really important. None of us have everything on the ballot memorized, not even us. So it just helps you research what candidates will be on there, what issues will be on there. And that's really helpful. And you can even take notes and bring them. So cheating is allowed. So go ahead and cheat, we encourage it. So if you want to look up your sample ballot, you can go to Ballotpedia's sample ballot lookup tool, Also, your Board of Elections usually will have a sample ballot for any upcoming elections. We're not sure if the March sample ballot is up yet for Cuyahoga County. So I think that was 30 days.
Yeah.
They have to have it 30 days before the election. So once it's like a month out, go ahead and check your local BOE website. So here are the early voting hours for the March primary. You can vote in person starting February 21st. The hours are pretty much the same from the 20th to like the 9th. But please note that that last week of early voting, they have some later evening hours, which is really convenient if you're working, you know, a 9 to 5 type of job. So just make sure that you look up the early voting hours and make sure that you make a plan before you go, so you don't either show up when they're closed or, yeah, just make sure you look that up. And the election day is March 19th. So here's some special circumstances that might arise in the process of you both getting ready to vote and in the process of voting. So let's say you have a disability and you can't physically enter your polling place. You must still be allowed to vote. So you will use curbside voting, either in your car at the door of your polling place. And a bipartisan team of election officials will assist you. And they're not allowed to question you about your condition. So you don't even have to say why you need why you need curbside voting, to say you have a disability and they have to assist you. So let's say you're an out-of-state college student voting in Ohio. You can vote by mail using the last 4 digits of your social security number. Be aware that if you already have another out-of-state ID and you get an Ohio ID, that will invalidate your other state ID. So really think about what you'd like to do there. You can vote in person using your passport or military ID. So some other special circumstances might happen. Say you're a military or overseas voter, you can follow the schedule and guidelines listed at militaryvotes.ohio.gov. If you're in the hospital, I hope you're not, but if something happens and you're in the hospital on election day, you can vote absentee until 3 p.m. If you're in jail for a non-felony offense, you're allowed to vote. If you're previously convicted of a felony and are no longer incarcerated, you can vote. If you're currently incarcerated for a felony conviction, you cannot vote. But if you have a question that we can answer here, and there are a lot, we're trying to keep it quick, remember. We recommend that you check out Ohio Voter Right Coalition's Voter Frequently Asked Questions page. It has so many questions that you could take up, and there's a link there. And if you're still unsure about your voter status, then we recommend that you contact your local board of elections and give them a call.
Okay. So we're gonna pause for some questions here. I don't know if there was any questions posed in the chat yet. However, that was a lot of information, so thank you so much, Bree. Just want to make sure that we're giving you a chance. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat now.
I don't see any questions. Just want to double tap on a few of the things that Bree noted. The voter registration deadline is next Tuesday. And so if you were out in the community engaging voters, we really want to make sure that we're reminding them to check their voter registration status. Most people do not think about elections in March. And if we take ourselves back 4 years ago, in the 2020 election cycle, we actually didn't have an in-person election due to COVID. So this just may not be on people's radar, right? The last time we had an in-person March primary was in 2016. So let's not assume that people know that we have a primary coming up this March. That goes for your friends and family, right? Call that uncle, call that cousin, that brother, and remind them. It's really important that folks have their registration up to date so that they can actually cast their ballot. Also want to double tap on the voting hours. There was legislation that passed in 2022 that went in effect in 2023 that made a number of different changes. One of those changes being the availability of early voting. So previously you could vote the Monday before election. that is no longer an option. So the last day that you can vote early at your local board of elections is on the Sunday before the election. And those are still limited hours from 1 to 5 p.m. So again, just reiterating people to make a vote plan. Circumstances, situations happen, and maybe voting on election day is not as easy for some people. They may be working, they may have childcare or other care giving responsibilities that may make it difficult for them to get there on election day. So it's really important that folks think about, pencil it in on their calendars when they're going to cast their ballot, and then check the Board of Elections website to make sure that the hours align with the schedule that they're looking to go and cast their ballot. Any other things you want to double tap?
Yeah, so Kirby asked a really awesome question. So Erica, if you're currently in jail for a non-violent offense, how do you obtain it that way?
Great question, Kirby. So currently in Ohio, there's no legal requirement to provide a ballot or the application for a ballot to individuals who are currently incarcerated in jail. More often than not, there are nonprofit organizations that are working with the warden of that particular jail to make arrangements to come in and engage the men and ladies that are awaiting sentence. Unfortunately, where this is the case in some other states, most notably Cook County in Illinois, their jail is actually a polling location. So this is something that in Ohio advocates have worked on, but as we sit here today, there is no, again, legal or formal requirement to provide individuals with a ballot in advance. So it really is incumbent upon organizations like ours and yours to make arrangements to go into that jail and provide the vote by mail applications. I would say also another challenging population to get this information to is individuals that are homeless or unhoused. So while we have great organizations like Luther Metropolitan Ministries and NEOC, who have been great grantees of Cleveland Votes, and work diligently to make sure that folks do have access to this information, we still know that there are individuals, who are not accessing services through a shelter or through a nonprofit, and technically, are eligible but may not know this information. So again, these are challenges that are ongoing, but thankfully we do have great organizations in our community that are doing their best to make sure that marginalized populations are receiving this information.
Thanks, Erica. So next up, I'm actually gonna shoot over to my right here to Lee Gates. She's gonna go ahead and talk about the March primary and the candidates and all the issues that will be on your ballot.
Hey everyone, so like Tasha said, I'm going to talk to everyone about primary elections and why they do matter, but also give you guys a little bit of a heads up of the candidates and the issues. So a big thing is we know that 2024 is a presidential election year, and we're really excited and amped for it, but Ohio's March primary is also very important because while it is a general election year for a president, there's a lot more candidates and issues than just the president. So in Cuyahoga County, right now, so again, we are Cleveland Votes, and so we primarily focus a lot of our work on Cuyahoga County because it's where we're located. Right now on the ballot in March, we will have the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor, Cuyahoga County Council, as well as Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. Residents will also have issue 6, which is property tax renewal for Health and Human Services, which I'll go over in a couple more slides. For the state of Ohio, we have the president. We have 1 seat for the Senate. On the federal level, we have all the seats for the House of Representatives. For the state level, we have 16 seats for the Senate, again, for the Ohio State Senate. We have all the seats for the House of Representatives, and we have 3 seats up for Supreme Court. I do want to note ballots will vary city and district. You want to just visit ballotpedia.org to make sure that you are actively looking at what's happening in your city. So the presidential candidates, which again, this is a really huge list. We know it's a big one for everyone because 2024 is when we're going to be voting for our president. So on the Democratic side, we have Joe Biden, we have Dean Phillips, and we have Marianne Williamson. On the Republican side, we have Ryan Binkley, Nikki Haley, and Donald Trump. For the U.S. Senate candidates, so this is for the federal Senate level. We have U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown, which is the current incumbent. And then we have a few Republican candidates right now, which is Secretary of State Frank LaRose, State Senator Matt Dolan, and Bernie Moreno. For the Ohio Supreme Court candidates, again, if I'm going fast or if you have any questions about what these actual roles entail, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. For the Ohio Supreme Court, they are separated based in tier terms. And so for a full term starting January 1st, 2025, for the Democrats, we have Michael Donnelly. And on the Republican side, we have Megan, I'm gonna mess it up, but Shanahan. For a full term that's starting January 2nd, 2025. On the Democratic side, we have Melody J. Stewart. And on the Republican side, we have Joseph T. Peters. For an unexpired term that will be ending December 31st, 2026, we have two Democratic candidates, that's Lisa Forbes and Terry Jameson. And then we have a Republican candidate, Daniel R. Hawkins. We have a lot of state representatives and a lot of state senators that are currently on the ballot. It is based off the district that you live in, because Ohio is made up of so many districts that we are not going to list them all individually, but we will drop a link in the chat so that you can look them up. But again, just make sure you look at what district you're in and who will be your representative. For the Cuyahoga County prosecutor, we have Matthew Ahn, who is running against the current incumbent, which is Mike O'Malley. They are both Democratic candidates. And we have a Republican contestant, and that's Anthony Otto. I do want to note that Anthony Otto is a write-in candidate. And we have a countywide levy on health and human services, that is issue 26. The levy was voted to be put on the March 2024 ballot and would renew a $4.8 million tax levy for health and human services. If it's approved, funds from the tax levy will supplement general fund appropriations for health and human services for the following 8 years. So that's $4.8 million that will be spread across 8 years. Because it's in a renewal, it will not increase your taxes, which I think is very important. If you have more questions about this particular issue, we will drop a link in the ballot. I mean, link in the chat.
Ready to vote? So we want to, of course, give a pause here to ask, for anybody that wants to ask any additional questions, or if we want to go ahead and talk about any feedback or any additional things here.
I just want to say I'm still dropping links. League is very efficient with their presentation style. So if I'm a little lag, give me a moment. I did want, League, if you could just double tap on the presidential candidates, and any questions that folks may have when they see that slide. There may be some names that they're curious as to why they're not there.
Yeah. So with any candidates, you are allowed to file to be put on a ballot. But as things continuously go out, sometimes candidates drop out because they're not on the official ballot. And so because they filed before, they might lose, preliminary races. Their things might not poll or trend in the way that they thought. Their campaign might just be like, hey, it's better to funnel these funds into a bigger candidate. The names are still there, so we will present them to you. But there is a few names that you might have heard over the last year that have been running that are no longer running. These are the official candidates that will appear on your March primary ballot.
And I do want to note that since our Secretary of State and our subsequently Board of Elections, they have a cutoff as to when they have to print the ballot. So you may see some additional names that have of candidates that have actually dropped off. So it's really important to make sure that you know who is actually still in the running, so that you are in fact casting your ballot for an eligible candidate. And that goes for really any race, not just for the presidential race.
And we just want to update any questions that you all might have before we move to our next slide. So if there's anything you want, you can come off mute and or you can drop it in the chat.
Hey, it's Kirby. I was just trying to furiously type my question in the chat, but one of the things that I often feel frustrated about is how little information there is available about judges and judicial candidates. I'm always particularly interested in, how do they rule on certain things? With senators, I'm interested in how do they vote? And that information helps me to get a sense of like if our values are aligned, how much they might be. And so I'm wondering if you all have any suggestions on where I could find a little more information about the judges.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's complicated because I think there's a pre-question to what you're saying, Kirby, which is like, how should I be evaluating, right? Like, I'm not a judge, I'm not an attorney, right? So, what qualifications do I have to make an assessment? So I think, some level setting is really important. I think while there's not one universal response to this question, I think what we would recommend is, to the best of your ability, attending candidate forums or any sort of like voter education forums, because I think that's really where you're gonna gain the greatest information when an organization convenes candidates and you're able to engage in dialogue. There are some resources, particularly for judicial candidates out there, and we'll be sure in our follow-up to include that information. Judicial Votes Count, Judge for Yourself. But often organizations like the League of Women Voters or even Greater Cleveland Congregation historically have held forums and debates to discuss or to engage candidates to discuss the issues. You'll also find certain nonprofits may engage candidates, judicial and others, on issue-specific topics, right? So there might be a health and human service organization that is particularly concerned around access to food for children, right? They may convene a forum with candidates so that they can better understand what is the position of those candidates on that particular topic. I do know that we have more recently, a wave of nonprofit journalism outlets that have been doing a really fantastic job in our Greater Cleveland area. So The Land and Signal Cleveland have been producing things like explainers. They did a slew of these last year for both the statewide ballot initiatives as well as the local ballot initiatives. So I would definitely recommend checking those out. And I do think there might be some more resources coming specifically around judicial candidates on the horizon here in Ohio. Marshall Project is another great resource. It's a national criminal justice news outlet, but we have actually now a local news team in Cleveland that's covering criminal justice issues at large, including things related to the judicial branch.
Thanks, Erica.
Any other questions in the chat before we move on?
Nope. I just Kayla uploaded that there is a upcoming forum that's on the 19th. So she's looking for the flyer, but once we get the flyer, we will make sure we email it out to everyone in the follow-up.
Awesome. Thanks for your question, Kirby.
Great question. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pass it over to my left now to Miss Erica. She's gonna go ahead and discuss a couple of things and how to get activated and what we did last year to activate in the community.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tasha. So again, as stewards in the community, our role is to make sure we have all this information, compiling accurate factual information is really important, particularly in the era of mis and disinformation that we're living in and have been living in. So it's incumbent upon us as community organizations to have the basic, nuts and bolts about elections. But beyond that, and once we share that information with community members, we want to activate them and we want to engage them so that they can get excited about civic engagement and elections at large. So we're going to provide a couple examples, hopefully in a spirit of inspiration, as you all are thinking about and looking ahead to the year and different ways that you may want to engage. Next slide. All right, so our first recommendation is to think about, how you may host a discussion, a fireside chat, maybe a resource fair or some type of forum, right? These are all great ways to connect with voters. As we've talked about throughout this presentation to date, it is a little overwhelming. There is a lot of information, right? And, doing that, perhaps outside on the street corner where there's traffic might be hard to communicate that information to a voter. So think about ways that your organization or in partnership with others may want to think about convening voters and or your constituents, not necessarily just voters, but individuals that your organization serves. When you're thinking about, planning an event, you want to definitely think about, who can I reach out to, right? Just because you're the planner of the event doesn't mean you also have to be the speaker of that event, right? There could be other folks within your network that can speak to those issues that would be really helpful for the attendees. When you're planning your event, you also want to think about, who is my audience and what is the best way for me to convene them and bring them together, right? It could be the time of day. It could be the day of the week. It could be the location. Is my location accessible to individuals who are utilizing public transportation, as an example? Does my location have free and accessible parking, right? So you want to think about your audience and try to minimize the barriers for them to the best of your ability. You also want to promote, right? You want to get this information out. And there's multiple ways to do that. While, I think our default, particularly in the last couple of years, is to utilize social media. We have to, always go back to kind of the old school ways of posting flyers or putting flyers in a coffee shop or, a local rec center, right? Again, thinking about your audience and where do they get their information and try to make sure that you're advertising that way. Obtaining registration in advance is always helpful, just so you as the planner can, make sure you have enough space to accommodate and food if that's going to be accessible as well. And the format is really up to you, right? You should have autonomy around how do I want to convene people, right? Again, always leading with the thought of who is my audience and what's the best way. So it could be a panel, it could be a conversation, it could be a training like we're doing today. You could have small breakouts while you're participating with the attendees, but definitely want to think about the best way to interact. So we want to uplift 3 events that we participated in last year and or one of our partners. So on the far left, you see Luther Metropolitan Ministries. We mentioned them a few moments ago. They're a local nonprofit supporting individuals that are homeless and houseless and unhoused in our community. And so last year, with many different issues we had on our fall ballot, they asked ACLU to partner with them and some folks from Case Western Reserve as well, to talk to their constituents about the power of people and what was going to be on the ballot, particularly around the statewide ballot initiatives. On the top right, you see the intergenerational luncheon. One of our attendees here today, Kayla Griffin, is on that screen as well, along with myself and my teammate Leek. So Third Space Action Lab is a local amazing organization headquartered in Glenville. This is actually a regular occurring luncheon that they do every 4th Friday at their location in Glenville. And for the October luncheon, they invited the 3 of us to come talk about the issues related to the polls, related to the ballot. And so this was great because, for Kayla, myself, and Leek, our role was to come with the information, right? Third Space, again, because they convene this event on a monthly basis, they manage the location, they manage the food, they manage the flow of the event, and our main role was to bring our brains and to be ready to engage in conversation. And the last event that we want to uplift is LGBT Center here in Cleveland on the west side. They convened a community forum to talk about reproductive rights. Again, we had issue 1 on our ballot last fall. And they asked us, as well as 2 other organizations, Preterm and ACLU here locally, to come be a part of that dialogue and discussion. So again, going back to, you don't have to do this by yourself. You definitely want to leverage the partnerships that you have when you're thinking about planning these type of events. Todd's trying to get us out of the room.
I literally just sit down.
Got it. One moment, everyone. Let me get the presentation back up. Thank you. All right, here we go. So then our next suggestion is thinking about how you can leverage existing events or collaborate, right? So you may be saying to yourself, I don't know how to plan an event. That sounds a little intimidating, Cleveland Boats. I don't know if I can do that. You know, I have a small team. I'm not sure if that's something that we can pull off by ourselves. No judgment zone, right? We have to do things that make sense for our organizations, for our organization's capacity. And so sometimes it may be helpful and maybe a little bit easier if this is your first time thinking about how to engage folks in the community. Tap into an existing event, right? There's no shame in that, right? There, you know, could be a reoccurring event in your neighborhood or a reoccurring event that you know that you're a part of, that you're like, hey, perhaps we can do this in partnership or collaboration. So two events that we'll highlight here, or two organizations we'll uplift. Cuyahoga Valley National Park is a great partner of ours. One of their staff members is actually on our board. And so they do a recurring event called Low Power Happy Hour. And they reached out to us last year, particularly to our teammate Leek here, and asked for them to join and participate in one of these low power happy hour events to talk about civic engagement and voting. So again, there wasn't a lot of labor for us. We just essentially had to show up with our brain and our information and an interactive activity to engage. They took the responsibility, of course, of managing the venue and doing the registration and recruiting people to come to that particular event. The next one we'll uplift is the Cleveland International Film Festival. This is an annual event that has been occurring in Cleveland for many years, as long as I've lived in Cleveland. I'm not sure how long total. But this is an event that happens every spring, right? We know it's going to happen. We know it's coming. And they are always looking for community partners to serve as a host for different films, right? So if your constituents or the audience that you work with maybe is really into films and different creative outlets, this is a great way to think about serving as a community partner with Cleveland International Film Festival. And then maybe you do an event, you know, a little bit before or after. We decided to do a happy hour last year before the film that we were sponsoring, which was entitled Gumbo Coalition. And so we met at a local eatery, just a couple storefronts away from where the film was going to be. We invited partners to come, you know, convene, network, socialize, and then we all walked over to the film, and it was great. And there wasn't, again, a lot of labor. So always want to make sure that you're convening and organizing things in a way that makes sense. We don't want folks, you know, stretching themselves beyond their both comfort level and their capacity. All right, so the last example we want to uplift is how can we tap into some of our non-traditional partners? And when we say non-traditional, it's not that these are organizations that are not providing great value and tremendous value add in our community, but they may not be the organization or company that you think about first when you think about civic and voter engagement, right? So traditional strategies to engage voters include things like canvassing, different relational organizing tools like peer-to-peer texting, or phone or text banking, right? Those are typical ways that organizations like Cleveland Votes, bless you, engage with voters, right? But we also have amazing community stewards in our community that are showing up in fantastic ways, and we want to leverage that, right? They have a different audience. They're serving maybe a different audience than what our organization may be serving. And perhaps, again, that is not the place that people think, oh, I can learn about voting, but they're a trusted messenger in the community. At the end of the day, people want to feel like whoever they're engaging with is actually a trusted person, right? So on the top left-hand corner, we want to uplift Bike Cleveland and the Heights Cycle Coalition. This was during our fall Pull Up to the Polls event that we did in October of 2023. We were posted up outside of the Board of Election here in Cuyahoga County. And those two organizations organized a ride. So they had two locations on the east side and the west side where cyclists convened, and then they all biked down to the Board of Elections, and they voted early, right? And this was great because, again, while Cleveland Votes is not a cycling organization, this was a great partnership that we were able to leverage. One of the members of Bike Cleveland's board is actually on our board, right? So also thinking about how can we leverage relationships within our organizations, right? So that was fantastic. The top right, you see two of our teammates, Tasha and Leek, posted up at Lecco Coffee. Lecco is a local coffee shop located on the west side of Cleveland. And they have been a great partner to us as an organization. They provided coffee at a number of events that we have had over the years. But in addition to that, they also made their coffee shop open to us to collect signatures for the PV campaign last year. The year before that, we actually did a National Voter Registration Day event where we had a table set up at their coffee shop. So again, think about that place you go to every morning to get your coffee. Would they be down? Would they be interested in maybe partnering with you? On the bottom left-hand corner, want to uplift Cafe LA, which is located in the St. Clair Superior neighborhood. Our teammate Yugen organized an event called a Civic Cafe in partnership with a number of organizations like All Voting is Local, as an example, last August ahead of the special election. And Kayla at Cafe LA, who also is a great partner, has provided catering at a number of our events here in Cleveland, or Cleveland Votes, made her outdoor space available to us to hold that event. And then last, certainly not least, our friends OCA Greater Cleveland, a local nonprofit primarily serving our AAPI population here in the city of Cleveland. They do a host of events at Asia Plaza, which is located on 30th and Payne. Side note, if you haven't been to Asia Plaza, you're losing out in life. Amazing restaurants and local stores. It's nothing to do with voting, but Asia Plaza goes hard. But yeah, so because Asia Plaza is a highly trafficked venue here in the city of Cleveland, not just serving API population, but broader Cleveland members, it's a great place to set up a table, right? You can catch people going to the ball wall spot, maybe people are coming out of Lee Wah after lunch, getting some dim sum, right? And so they've done a number of events, tabling events to register people, engage voters, and teach them about, what they should be aware of and how they can be civically engaged. So lots of options. Hopefully you all feel inspired. And I think I'm turning it back over to Tosh.
So we pretty much got a lot of information from Bree, Leek, and Erica here. So I want to take some time and do a quick breakout room for everyone. And we're going to talk about what does this primary election matter to you and how folks really feel about it. Just like, and be honest, like me personally, I just, I'm indifferent. I'm kind of in one of those spaces, like, I just really hope it works out in my favor. So, and I'm sure most people are kind of feeling a little down, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're really excited just to get out there. So, we're getting some time and get in the room. One moment. All right, welcome back, everybody. So I just want to go ahead and give the floor to everybody give the floor to everybody. Let's talk about what you spoke in your room. If there's anything you want to share with the class, feel free to do it. And you can just come off mute and do that.
And or we will call on you if we don't have a volunteer. Because we know all of y'all, so.
Like I'm as a former elementary school teacher, I will be the volunteer so that nobody has to get called on unexpectedly, at least not yet. I would say one of the like main things that we talked about in my small group is the frustration that we increasingly feel when it comes to our elected representatives not actually representing our perspectives and values when they get into office. So, you know, in some ways, trying to work with the system that we have and vote for particular representatives. And we do that and they get into office. And then when we call on them, they don't align with us any longer. They align with where the money is. And that is not often in alignment with what we want as community members, as people who care about our state, our country, the globe. And it just feels really frustrating.
Empathize. You know, while we may have limitations as a 501c3, I think we can still encourage you and any attendee, you know, to think about what does accountability look like and what are ways that I can, you know, participate in avenues, organizations, strategies that, you know, does have the legal purview to hold elected officials accountable, right? And there are a myriad of ways, and you know, we always sort of uplift and encourage people to think about civic engagement on a spectrum, right? And so, you know, on the far end of that spectrum, it may be, you know, Kirby being like, that's it, done, I'm running for office. Just so you know, like I got your back, I'll be a campaign manager. Because you're like, enough is enough, right? But maybe you're not quite ready to go there yet. So maybe you decide to work with a candidate, right? That doesn't align with your values, you know, who is in fact, you know, running for office. So, you know, there's a couple of different things that can be done, but there are a number of organizations, 501c4 organizations, other partisan organizations, right, where they have more latitude than us as a C3, but the frustration is real, and I think a lot of people, you know, would relate and empathize with you on that. Thank you. Can we get one more reflection? Lisa Macaroni.
So Ronaldo and I, when we were talking, I guess like the bigger, what kind of one of the things I hope to get out of being here was like, I don't exactly know, you know, when people say, oh, I don't vote because it doesn't matter, or I don't vote because I don't care, or, you know, like what, besides me going, what do you mean you don't care? You know, what are some practical good responses to not just why should I vote in the primary, but in general, you know, without sounding preachy or judgy, that people don't think voting is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that something that I have put into my own personal practice is that I never enter a conversation with the expectation of changing somebody's mind. I enter it with the knowing that I have knowledge that I can share. And because I have this knowledge, I want people to be as informed as possible. And I apply that to people working in civics. You know, we get told often, I don't vote because and yeah, I understand that hopelessness. So you can empathize with a person, understand why they might make the choice. But at the end of the day, we know that voting doesn't matter. We know what is happening on those lines. We know what happens when the numbers are low and people don't show up. And because we know that we are equipped with information to let people know statistics are real. You can feel how you feel, but you can't fight numbers. Facts are facts and data is data. And so you enter a conversation with facts and you keep it fact-based, you oftentimes level set and people tend to meet you where you are, just like you're meeting them where they are.
What Leek says.
Everything.
Yeah. I think the only other tips I would provide is lead with yourself. I think it's incredibly important to lead with your own story. While day to day, I'm not doing sort of as much like on the ground engaging voters as I was back in the day. I always start with just like introducing myself. Hi, what's your name? Bree. Hi, Bree. Nice to meet you, right? And, in the first 30 seconds, let's see what I can pull from, Bree introducing herself to me that I can maybe find like a connection, right? So I happen to know a couple things about Bree. So it's like, oh, so you're a former educator, for a former teacher, professor. Fantastic. Well, let's talk about education, right? It's like, let's try to connect that person's interest to, not even just like the voting and the act of voting, but just the way, decisions are made in our country, in our state, in our local region. And things that might be important to Bree as an educator are, maybe an upcoming levy, right? That would help, perhaps CMSD as an example, right? So like trying to find that sort of hook and connection. The unfortunate reality is this, and that is by design, the system is set up in a way that doesn't make it easy for us to make these cases, right? And so as community stewards, as community advocates, as folks that, want to get folks involved, it is really frustrating because when we open our phones or look at our laptops or the news outlets, there are probably 20 other reasons why someone should not be involved versus the one reason they should be involved, right? And it doesn't always feel good to see some of those deceptive sort of practices and tactics, give people obviously encouragement. So, based upon what Lee said and what I'm saying, I think it has to be personal and you have to, sort of take that time to connect with voters on a personal way that they can see the value for themselves.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks, Lisa and Kirby, for sharing with everybody. We have a couple more things. I know we're running up on time now, so I'm going to go ahead and move over to Lee.
You can do these rapid fire.
Okay, I'll get done real quick. So yeah, again, thanks everyone so much for spending your lunchtime hour with us. We have a couple of really quick things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is election protection. At the end of the day, we want you to know that you are covered. So we're going to drop a link for the election protection hotline. It's 866-YOUR-VOTE.org. And if you need to ride to the polls, we have you covered. Ride, share, to vote. Another link we're going to drop for you. If you need voter ID help, we mentioned Vote Riders earlier, but they're a phenomenal organization. We have worked in close partnership with them for a while, and they are committed to helping people vote, and they are committed to providing resources to help them vote. And lastly, if you have not heard about it, right now, we in the state of Ohio are literally fighting against redistricting. And we're trying to end the gerrymandering. We're trying to not let politicians know that they can just carve away Ohio in the way that they want. And so if you haven't heard, there's a few upcoming trainings for the Citizens Not Politicians movement. That's on the Fair District Ohio website. We're gonna drop that link as well. If you have not signed that petition, please find one. They are county-based, so make sure that you are looking at the top of the petition and make sure you're signing for the county that you live in. That is really important because every signature counts. This is a way that we must take our power back and remain and keep our power. And here is a quick screenshot of all the circulating trainings that are happening. They are on that website that Erica dropped, that Fair District Ohio, literally on the homepage. That is one of the first things you can see is the upcoming trainings. They are all recorded, which I think is amazing. So we know that sometimes you can't with them, but because they are recorded, you can go through them and then you can reach out to whoever was leading that training with the follow-up questions to make sure that you are actively trained on it. And lastly, as much as we want to connect you guys to all of our partners and organizations that we send out, we want you guys to stay connected with us. If you are not signed up for our newsletter, Bree is lovely. She publishes our newsletter every 2 weeks.
Lovely.
It's lovely. She publishes our newsletter every 2 weeks, but if you're not signed up or you want to get some friends signed up, just give them the media@clevelandvotes.com email. And then if you have any general inquiries, or if you want to get more involved with Cleveland Votes, we're always looking for people to help us out because we can't do this work alone and we rely deeply on our community. You can reach out to us. Tasha is the person you'll be talking to at info@clevelandvotes.com. And then to other people in the training, if you don't follow us on the interwebs, hello, I need you to screenshot this. You guys are funny. Okay, we're great on Twitter. But also, we post a lot on Instagram, we post a lot on LinkedIn. And if you want to hear about more trainings and things that we have coming up, like our ECDF is going to be dropping soon, which is our Equitable Civic Engagement Fund. Also, we'll be having our State of Our Democracy towards the middle of the summer. So yeah, if you want to hear more about us, follow us. Beep us, tweet us, call us if you want to reach us. Slack, just say hey. But again, we want to thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and appreciate you all wanting to remain civically engaged. Thank you for letting us do what we do and making our work a lot easier. We appreciate y'all.
Thank you.